Hi, everyone, and welcome to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this movie review video as part of my February horror series where I take a look at the entire Scream franchise. Today, we'll be taking a look at the fourth film in the franchise, which is Scream 4 from 2011. Actually, a first time watch for me, believe it or not, even though it's been out for over 10 years. But I do have the movie here on Blu ray that I purchased, Scream 4. So, yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it as usual, starting with the setup, the premise, and the cast, and then I'll get into my thoughts and review, um, which I'll try to keep mostly spoiler free. So, Scream 4 is a 2011 American meta slasher film, once again directed by Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson. Thank God. Produced by Outer Banks Entertainment, distributed by Dimension Films. It's the fourth installment in the Scream film series. The film takes place on the 15th anniversary of the original Woodsboro murders and involves Sidney Prescott returning to the town after 10 years, where Ghostface once again begins killing students from Woodsboro High. Like its predecessor, Scream 4 combines the violence of the slasher genre with elements of black comedy and whodunit mystery to satirize the cliches of film remakes. The film also provides commentary on the extensive usage of social media and the obsession of internet fame. So basically, the film opens on the 15th anniversary of the original Woodsboro massacre. High school students Jenny Randall and Marnie Cooper are murdered by a new ghost face. Sidney Prescott returns to Woodsboro the next day to promote her self help book with her publicist Rebecca Walters. Sidney's cousin Jill Roberts, who is coping with the infidelity of her ex boyfriend Trevor Sheldon, gets a threatening phone call from Ghostface, as does her friend and neighbor Olivia Morris. Jill and Olivia, alongside their friend Kirby Reed, are questioned about their calls by Dewey Riley, now the town sheriff, while the deputies, Judy Hicks, Anthony Perkins, and Ross Haas, assist him in the case. Meanwhile, Dewey's wife, Gail Weathers, is struggling with writer's block and decides to investigate the murders, much to her husband's dismay. Sydney stays over with Jill and her Aunt Kate. That night, Olivia is killed by Ghostface as Jill and Kirby watch a horror movie. At the hospital, Sydney fires Rebecca after learning of her plan to exploit the murders to increase her book sales, and Rebecca is subsequently murdered by Ghostface. So that's sort of the setup and the premise of the movie. Um, Cast wise, of course, we have David Arquette as Dewey Riley. We have Nev Campbell as Sidney Prescott. Courtney Cox as Gail Weathers, who are the three returning characters. And then we also, in this movie, we have Emma Roberts as Jill Roberts, Hayden Panettiere as Kirby Reed, Anthony Anderson as Anthony Perkins, a deputy, Adam Brody as Ross Haas, a deputy, Rory Culkin as Charlie Walker, Mary McDonald as Kate Roberts, and Mary Shelton as Judy Hicks. So yeah, that's the setup, the premise, and the cast for Scream 4, again from 2011. First thing I'll say about this movie, as you probably already heard, is it's great to have Kevin Williamson back writing this movie. He was sorely missed in the last installment in this franchise, in my opinion. Really nice to have him back. And of course, Wes Craven. I don't know if this was the last movie he directed. I know it's the last Scream movie he directed. Rest in peace, Wes Craven. Just a horror legend. But yeah, it's great to have those two back in the saddle again, so to speak, with this movie. Um, Overall, this movie succeeds in a lot of places and also comes up short in a lot of places, in my opinion. So it's sort of a mixed bag, although I liked it more than I didn't. So let's just get into it, starting with the pros of this movie. You got to start with the cast of characters in this movie. I actually think it's probably the best, at least in terms of main characters, since the original movie. The returning characters as well as the new characters in this movie. Um, the standouts to me, as far as characters and the actresses and actors, are obviously Nev Campbell. You have to mention her in every movie. Rory Culkin, Hayden Panettiere, and Emma Roberts, I think, are really the standouts in this movie as far as the cast goes, and those particular characters as well that they play. So yeah, really solid cast for the most part. I do have a few issues with some of the characters, but I'll get into that later in my review. But I do feel like overall, from the main character standpoint, I feel like it's the best, the closest we've had since the original. Um, they definitely really ratchet up the gore and the blood in this movie. So if that's your thing, you're really going to enjoy this movie, I think. As I mentioned in my Scream 3 movie review, at that time, it was right around the time of Columbine, so they really had to sort of sidestep the blood and the gore in that movie. But in this movie, they don't really sidestep anything with that. So I feel like it's the goriest and bloodiest movie we've had so far in this franchise. It feels like it anyway. Whether it actually is or not, I'm not sure. But and then, of course, you got to get back into the writing. As I mentioned, it's great to have Kevin Williamson back on board in this movie. Um, the writing is once again on point because of him. From the story to the characters and the dialogue between the characters, I feel it's like really solid. The best since the original, in my opinion, or at least in a couple of movies anyway. Um, and it's just a very smart, well written in terms of being smart and current with the time that it was made story. It really works for that time that it was made. And just like the original, it's just very smart writing. So, yeah, those things really stood out to me in terms of the writing. Got to talk about the third act of this movie as well, of course. I think it's the best third act since the original as well. I mean, they really go for it in this third act. I think more so than they have in any other movie. It's very suspenseful and crazy. There's some good twists and turns in the third act. As I said, it feels like they really went for it more than they ever have before. Yeah, just a really enjoyable third act for the most part. I have one issue that I'll get into in my cons here, but yeah, it's a third act that you're really like on the edge of your seat with. I feel like. Um, Once again, it has a lot of. I have a good time with the meta-ness of this film, which of course is what the Scream franchise is known for. This time, of course, focusing on the remake craze. The first movie focused on horror movies, the second movie on sequels of horror movies, the third movie's on trilogies or franchises like trilogies, and this movie's about the remake. So it kind of all makes sense the way the movies fall, and I really enjoyed sort of the satirizing and the cliches of the remake craze that was going on during this time, and in fact is still going on 10 years later yet. But it's pretty fun and effective, I think. So I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the return of the small town setting of this movie, going back to Woodsboro. The second and third movies kind of had different settings, which was cool at the time. I felt like that was needed, but it's good to get back to Woodsboro. It sort of feels comfortable, like a warm blanket as far as this franchise goes. And plus, I kind of enjoy the small town um, settings anyway in horror movies, so that really worked for me. I think the reveal of the killer in this movie is very effective. In some ways, it might be the most effective reveal we've had of a killer, even more so than the first movie, because in the first movie, you kind of feel like it wasn't a total shock, even though it's really well done how it's revealed, and it has a great third act climax, of course, in the original. But in this movie, I don't know. I didn't see it coming myself. Now, maybe I'm the only one. Maybe there's people out there that'll say, "Oh, I totally saw it coming." Of course, you always have people that do that, no matter whether they did or not. But I thought it was an effective kill. Sorry, an effective reveal of the killer. Like I said, I didn't see it coming, and it also works because the motivations seem the most believable and smart. A very smart plan that the killer has since the original, in my opinion. Like the second one didn't entirely work for me. The third one definitely didn't work for me in terms of the killer's motivations. But this one, I mean, the plan that the killer has is very smart and well done, especially the time that it was made. It really works and fits into the whole social media and obsession with internet fame kind of thing that goes on. I also enjoyed the character arcs for Sydney and Dewey of the returning characters. Dewey's obviously now he was a deputy in the first couple movies. He's obviously the sheriff now in this movie. That kind of felt right after 15 years in Woodsboro for him for the most part. And also Sydney, I really like where the story picks up with her, where it's basically 10 years since the last murders of the third film, and she's on a book tour now. She's matured. She's just at a different point in life, but she's still got that really badass character that she's I mean, she's the least afraid, I think, of Ghostface or any of the phone calls in this movie more than she has been in any of the previous ones. She's just got a really nice character arc. As the movies have gone on, you can tell she's like, okay, bring this shit on, as opposed to the first movie where um, naturally she was scared of what was going on, as if it was still really a good badass. And in this movie, she definitely, it's definitely all there, as well as being at a different point in her life. It just really works from that standpoint. So yeah, those are my pros for this movie. A lot of things I really enjoyed about it, but now I'm going to get into some things I didn't enjoy that I consider to be cons of the movie. I don't know how other people feel about it, but I wasn't a huge fan of the opening of this movie. If you've seen my other reviews of the first three movies, it's kind of like the opening is kind of dipped each movie, and in this movie, it's dipped even more. I really just didn't like it, despite a few interesting cameos that they have. But they basically tried to use the Stab series as sort of a gotcha again, and almost gotcha again kind of opening. And I don't know, I don't know. I kind of felt it was cheap and lazy, and it just wasn't as nearly as effective as the first three openings. Even the third movie, that's probably the one place that I'd say that even the third movie had it over this one was the opening for me anyway. I might be in the minority. I don't know how other people feel about that, but I wasn't a huge fan of it. Oh, you know what? I forgot one other pro. As I was getting into the opening, that it's a very small pro that I enjoyed, but I really liked how they made the four out of the A and Scream here. I thought that was very clever, really genius actually, to get the title of Scream 4 using the A as the four. That's just a little thing, but I really noticed it at the movie when the after the opening when the Scream title comes on. I just thought that was very effective. So sorry I missed that. I just had to throw that out there before I got too far into my cons. But yeah, getting into the opening before the title just wasn't a huge fan of it. I do feel like the movie kind of struggles. It has trouble getting going from in terms of finding a balance between the original returning characters, the three of Dewey, Gale, and Sydney, with the new cast of characters that we get in this movie. Um, Kind of where and who we're supposed to focus on in this movie. I thought like the first act and act and a half, even the second act of the movie, it just didn't feel as cohesive as some of the earlier movies in this franchise to me. And I think they really had trouble both writing and directing as far as getting these characters sort of interwoven them within the story. As far as there's not really a main character in this movie. We have a lot of there's like three or four or even five like main characters in this movie, and we're not really sure as an audience who we're supposed to focus on. Is it one of the newer characters? Is it one of the returning characters? Um, it's just kind of hard to know. So I don't think they necessarily nailed the balance there with that. Um, just not as cohesive. I also feel like the character of Gail. Now I mentioned Sydney and Dewey. I thought had nice character arcs. Gail's character, played by Courtney Cox, it felt a little bit more forced in this movie. Like she was just kind of there to be there because she's one of the returning characters and she's still alive, so we have to have her in this movie. They tried to make this arc about how she's got writer's block with writing her books. I don't know. It just didn't entirely work for me. That's the one returning character of the three that I felt like really didn't belong as much in this movie. They didn't really give her a lot to do. They didn't really have a lot of writing or story for that character, and it just kind of felt like it was forced. A little bit of a round peg and a square hole with her. It just didn't really have that natural story or focus in this movie with her character. As much as I like the third act and the climax of the movie, I do think the third act goes on a little bit too long. And normally I wouldn't say that's a con, but because of that, it kind of diminishes the killer's motivation slash plan that they have that they reveal. Um, it's just kind of, I don't know, for me, it sort of takes away just a little bit, and I don't necessarily think it needed to go on as long as it did as a result. Like the other movies, again, there's really no creative kills in this movie. It's the formula stab, stab, stab. Now, again, they do show a lot more blood and gore, as I said in this movie. So the stabbing is a lot more focused on, and the camera stays on it. But as far as the kills themselves, it's just like the other movies. There's not really a lot of creativity there. It's stabs with a knife. I don't think the cinematography is the best in this movie. Certainly not in the franchise. I think this is the least in terms of cinematography that I've liked of all four movies so far. The movie was just a little too brightly lit the way it was shot, and it's got some weird color reveals as well that stuck out to me when I was watching this movie. It didn't have that dark sort of scream movie feel to it like the earlier ones did. So that's just something I noticed that I have to put in with my cons. Also, some of the characters in this movie, as much as I like the first four or five main characters, basically talking about Dewey and Sydney and Jill and Kirby and Charlie. I think those characters are really good and have good character arcs and well written, and they're well acted as well. Some of the characters that don't really, they're just kind of there to be killed are the two cops as well as the publicist. Um, I just kind of feel like there wasn't really much to their characters. You know, you got the two cops that are just kind of sitting outside making the typical cop errors that we see in horror movies where, you know, they're not where they need to be and they're not making the best decisions. They kind of poke fun at the genre and horror movies. That part I kind of enjoyed. But as far as the characters themselves, they're just there to be killed. Same with the publicist and I would argue even the friend. I didn't put her down as the cast. But there's another friend of Kirby and Jill at the beginning of the movie who basically dies like in the first half hour of the movie. She looks great. I forget the actress's name. She does a good job, but that's another character we don't really get a lot with her, and she's just kind of there to be killed. So, again, this movie has a lot of characters that are thrown at you. I think maybe a few more than they needed to. But again, you got to have the kills on screen, and so I think a lot of them were there just for that. So, but that's basically all I got, guys, for pros and cons. I do really enjoy this movie. The third act alone, there's some fun cameos at the beginning, even though I really didn't care for the story wise the beginning. Um, but the main characters really kill it in this movie, especially Nev Campbell, Emma Roberts, and Hayden Panettiere. I thought they really added a lot. I really liked the writing once again by Kevin Williamson. For the most part, the directing of Wes Craven, and yeah, the movie for the most part, I think it works more than it doesn't. So I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10 overall as far as the rating goes. It's not perfect. I don't think it's a masterpiece or anything like that, but 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the sort of the reinventing after 10 or 11 years from the previous movies. I thought they did a good job writing with that and added some good, interesting characters. And as I said, they upped the blood and the gore in this movie. So 8 out of 10. Go ahead and comment down below, guys, what you think of Scream 4. Did you like it more than me? Did you like it less than me? Please like this video and hit the little notification bell below so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos for this franchise. I do plan on seeing Scream 5 at the theater now, probably in the next couple of days, so I'll have my review up for that. So you don't want to miss that, as well as my ranking video of all these movies for the franchise. Please make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss not only the rest of this series, but the next 3 or 4 months of great horror content that I have coming out. But thank you for watching this review. Hope everybody's doing well and stay scared. Bye.